Hi, welcome to week 4 of Gridiron Gurus for the Kennewick Journal and Morning Sentinel. I'm Travis Lazarzik alongside Bill Stewart. The big game in this region probably this weekend, Bill, is in the Pine Tree Conference Class B up in Farmington with undefeated Mount Blue versus undefeated Gardner.
Sure, and you have to think that the winner of this game is going to be sitting at the pole to get that #1 seed, up there with Levitt for the playoffs. This is a pretty big game, obviously, and of course Gardner comes in, led by Alonzo Connor, and each week, we always talk about, what a threat he is on the ground, which of course is always the case. But interestingly enough, for this game, it could be his presence on the defensive side of the ball that could be the most impactful. He plays an aggressive cornerback, and certainly it's going to be a big challenge for him and the rest of the Gardner defense. Certainly up front, led by John Kelly. He's the only two-way starter on the line. Wyatt Thornton, who plays that hybrid defensive end linebacker, and the entire secondary. This is going to be a big-time test for the Tigers.
Yeah, Mount Blue's coming off of back-to-back games where they scored at least 50 points. And quarterback Jordan Whitney has already thrown for over 500 yards. He's got a lot of weapons at his disposal, and receivers Cam Senick, Chris Malone, Nick Hilton, running backs Isaiah Tracy, and Eric Berry. They just have a lot of different ways they can go. Coach Gary Parlin said, whereas most teams hope where, if plan A doesn't work, they'll go to plan B. He says if plan A doesn't work, they feel like they have another plan A, because they just have so many different places they can go. The big thing for them defensively is, even though Gardner showed that they can pass the ball last week when Waterville held Connor to 94 yards and a touchdown when Dennis Meehan threw for 2 scores, the big thing for Mount Blue is still to try to slow down Connor. Gary Parlin said the biggest thing is just a team tackle, because he's so good at breaking tackles. So it'll be interesting to see if they can keep the Tigers from putting on those long drives and keeping their own offense off the field.
Sure, and another big game in the Campbell Conference Western C, 3-0 Winslow comes down to 2-1 Winthrop. These two teams are 2 of 7 teams in the Campbell Conference that sit 2-1 or better. So, the winner of this game certainly is going to put itself in a real good position for playoff positioning and possible playoff seeding. Winthrop, this is a very big test for Winthrop. They've had a couple big wins this year. They did have a very difficult loss a year ago. Coach Joel Stoneton said, look, it looks like Winslow's going to have a little bit of a size advantage up front. And of course, the Black Raiders last week, looked pretty impressive in a win against Maranacook, eating up a lot of time on the clock, and that's something that that Winthrop is going to have to watch out for.
Yeah, Coach Mike Savitsky, who won his 200th game last week for Winslow, just went old school in the second half to grind out long drives, kept the ball on the ground. If they can do that again, it could be a long night for the Ramblers.
Sure, and elsewhere across the state here, Kents Hill is going to be opening up its season this weekend against perennial power Proctor Academy. That game's going to be 3:30 Saturday afternoon at Kents Hill. Kents Hill finished 3-5 last season, and Proctor went 6-2 and is 31-10-1 in the last 5 years. So that's going to be a big challenge for the Huskies.
Yeah. And in the Pine Tree Conference Class A, an interesting game is 2-1 Skowhegan at 1-2 Lewiston. Lewiston, who looked so good against Mount Ararat in the first weeks, coming off of tough back-to-back losses to Messalonskee and Brunswick. Skowhegan just upset Messalonskee last week, 34-14. So it'll be interesting to see if the Indians can keep that going.
Sure.
All right. Enjoy whatever game you get out to this week, and we'll see you next week for Gridiron Gurus.